So, I have quite a bit to talk about here that I could talk about. This is a fascinating novel, Les Mis, and as much as I'd love to talk about Jean Valjean and especially Javert, maybe someday in the future I'll do a whole thing just on Javert and how he's become one of those archetypal characters. But today, I want to talk about sewers, as you probably guessed from the title, and it should be in book volume 5, The Intestine of the Leviathan. Now, from the description of this video, you've probably already guessed what I am asserting today, and the evidence is a little bit here. I've often, but just to lay the groundwork a little bit, I've often wondered why so many video games have sewer levels. Where did those come from? Was it just an especially famous D&D module or something? Well, where did they get the idea? Like why always the sewers? I think after you read this is one of the most powerful, influential books ever made, ever penned. But this section that comes out of nowhere, I think I need to read it in full, and then we'll talk about it. And at first, you know what? I'll just let it speak for itself. Let me just pop in a quick Discord link so everyone on Discord knows we're doing this reading, and then we're going to get started. For quite a while after I discovered this, I kept this around and I would show it to friends just because you wouldn't believe this unless you read it. It's one of those things like you hear in Moby Dick there's an entire chapter just about the color white. And you're like, no way. And then you actually see it and it's real. Or, I could name 3 or 4 things, some of which I saved. Because of just how ridiculous they were. And this is one of them. You ready for this? No, you're not ready for this and you never will be, but we're reading it anyway. Chapter 1. The Land Impoverished by the Sea. Paris casts... Hold on a second. I forgot something. There we go. I have better lighting now. Sort of. It's a work in progress. Paris casts 25 millions yearly into the water, and this without metaphor. How and in what manner? Day and night. With what object? With no object. With what intention? With no intention. Why? For no reason. By means of what organ? By means of its intestine. What is its intestine? The sewer. 25 millions is the most moderate approximate figure which the valuations of special science have set upon it. Science, after having long groped about, now knows that the most fecundating and the most efficacious of fertilizers is human manure. The Chinese, let us confess it to our shame, knew it before us. Not a Chinese peasant. It is Ekberg who says this. Goes to town without bringing back with him, at the 2 extremities of his bamboo pole, 2 full buckets of what we designate as filth. Thanks to human dung, the earth in China is still as young as in the days of Abraham. Chinese wheat yields 100-fold of the seed. There is no guano comparable in fertility with the detritus of a capital. A great city is the most mighty of dung makers. Certain success would attend the experiment of employing the city to manure the plain. If our gold is manure, our manure, on the other hand, is gold. What is done with this golden manure? It is swept into the abyss. Fleets of vessels are dispatched, at great expense, to collect the dung of petrels and penguins at the South Pole, and the incalculable element of opulence which we have at hand, we send to the sea. All the human and animal manure which the world wastes, restored to the land, instead of being cast into the water, would suffice to nourish the world. Those heaps of filth at the gateposts, those tumbrils of mud which jolt through the street by night, those terrible casks of the street department, those fetid drippings of subterranean mire, which the pavements hide from you. Do you know what they are? They are the meadow in flower, the green grass, wild thyme, thyme and sage. They are game, they are cattle, they are the satisfied bellows of the great oxen in the evening. They are the perfumed hay, they are the golden wheat, they are the bread on your table, they are the warm blood in your veins, they are health, they are joy, they are life. This is the will of that mysterious creation, which is transformation on earth and transfiguration in heaven. Restore this to the great crucible, your abundance will flow forth from it. The nutrition of the plains furnishes the nourishment of men. You have it in your power to lose this wealth, and to consider me ridiculous to boot. This will form the masterpiece of your ignorance. Statisticians have calculated that France alone makes a deposit of 500 million every year in the Atlantic through the mouths of her rivers. Note this. With 500 millions, we could pay 1/4 of the expenses of our budget. The cleverness of man is such that he prefers to get rid of these 500 millions in the gutter. It is the very substance of the people that is carried off, here, drop by drop, there, wave after wave, the wretched outpour of our sewers into the rivers, and the gigantic collection of our rivers into the oceans. Every hiccough of our sewers costs us 1,000 francs. From this springs two results: the land impoverished and the water tainted, hunger arising from the furrow and disease from the stream. It is notorious, for example, that at the present hour the Thames is poisoning London. So far as Paris is concerned, it has become indispensable of late to transport the mouth of our sewers downstream, below the last bridge. A double tubular apparatus, provided with valves and sluices, sucking up and driving back, a system of elementary drainage, simple as the lungs of a man, and which is already in full working order in many communities. In England, would suffice to conduct the pure water of the fields into our cities, and to send back to the fields the rich water of the cities. And this easy exchange, the simplest in the world, would retain among us the 500 millions now thrown away. People are thinking of other things. The process actually in use does evil, with the intention of doing good. The intention is good, the result is melancholy. Thinking to purge this city, the population is blanched like plants raised in cellars. A sewer is a mistake. When drainage, everywhere, with its double function, restores what it takes, shall have replaced the sewer, which is a simple impoverishing washing, then this is combined with the data of a new social economy, the product of the earth will be increased tenfold, and the problem of misery will be singularly lightened, and the suppression of parasitism, and it will be solved. In the meanwhile, the public wealth flows away to the river. The leakage takes place. Leakage in the word is the word. Europe is being ruined in this manner by exhaustion. As for France, we have just cited its figures. Now Paris contains 1/25 of the total population of France, and Parisian guano being the richest of all. We understate the truth when we value the loss on the part of Paris at 25 millions in the 500 million which France annually rejects. These 25 millions employed in assistance and enjoyment would double the splendor of Paris. the city spends them in sewers. So that we may say that Paris's greatest prodigality, its wonderful festival, its Beojan folly, its orgy, its stream of gold from full hands, its pomp, its luxury, its magnificence, is its sewer system. It is in this manner that, in the blindness of our poor political economy, we drown and allow to float downstream, and to be lost in the gulfs of the well-being of all. There should be nets at St. Cloud for this public fortune. Economically considered, the matter can be summed up as thus. Paris is a spendthrift. Paris, that model city, that patron of well-arranged capitals, of which every nation strives to possess a copy, that metropolis of the ideal, that august country of the initiative, of impulse and of effort, that center of the dwelling of minds, that nation city, that hive of the future, that marvelous combination of Babylon and Corinth, would make a peasant of the faux kind shrug his shoulders from the point of view which we have just indicated. Imitate Paris, and you will ruin yourselves. Moreover, the particularity in this immemorial and senseless waste, Paris is itself an imitator. These surprising exhibitions of stupidity are not novel. This is no young folly. The ancients did like the moderns. The sewers of Rhodes, says Liebig, have absorbed all the well-being of the Roman peasant. When the Campagna of Rome was ruined by the Roman sewer, Rome exhausted Italy. And when she had put Italy in her sewer, she poured in Sicily, then Sardinia, then Africa. The sewers of Rome have engulfed the world. This cesspool offered its engulfment to the city and the universe. Urbi et Urbi, eternal city, unfathomable sewer. Rome sets the example for these things as well as for others. Paris follows this example with all the stupidity peculiar to intelligent towns. For the requirements of the operation upon the subject of which we have just explained our views, Paris has beneath it another Paris, a Paris of sewers, which has its streets, its crossroads, its blind alleys, its arteries, and its circulation, which is of mire and minus the human form. For nothing must be flattered, not even the great people. Where there is everything, there is also ignominy. Ignominy. By the side of sublimity. And if Paris contains Athens, the city of light, Tyre, the city of might, Sparta, the city of virtue, Nineveh, the city of marvels, it also contains Lutetia, the city of mud. However, the stamp of its power is there also, and the titanic sink of Paris realizes, among monuments, that strange ideal realized in humanity by some men like Machiavelli, Bacon, and Mirabeau. Grandiose vileness. The subsoil of Paris, if the eye could penetrate its surface, would present the aspect of a colossal madrepore. A sponge has no more partitions and ducts than the mound of earth for the circulation of 6 leagues round about, on which rests the great and ancient city, not to mention its catacombs, which are a separate cellar, not to mention the inexorable trellis work of gas pipes, without reckoning the vast tubular system for the distribution of fresh water, which ends in the pillar fountains. The sewer alone forms a tremendous, shadowy network under the two banks, a labyrinth which has its slope for a guiding thread. There appears, in the humid mist, the rat, which seems the product of Paris, to which Paris has given birth. Chapter 2. The Ancient History of the Sewer. Let the reader imagine Paris lifted off like a cover. The subterranean network of sewers, from a bird's eye view, would outline the banks. On the banks, a species of large branch grafted on the river. On the right bank, the belt sewer will form the trunk of this branch. The secondary ducts will form its branches, and those without exit are twigs. This figure is but a summary, 1.5 exact. The right angle, which is the customary angle for this species of subterranean ramifications, being very rare in vegetation. A more acute image of this strange geometrical plan can be formed by supposing that one is viewing some eccentric oriental alphabet, as intricate as a thicket against a background of shadows, and the misshapen letters would be welded one to another in apparent confusion, and as a haphazard, now by their angles and again by their extremities. Sinks and sewers played a great part in the Middle Ages. In the lower empire of the Orient of old, the masses regarded these beds of decomposition, these monstrous cradles of death, with a fear that was almost religious. The vermin ditch of Benares is no less conductive in giddiness than the lion's ditch of Babylon. Teglath-Thalasar, according to the rabbinical books, swore by the sink of Nineveh. It was from the sewer of Munster that John of Leyden produced his false moon, and it is from the cesspool of Keksheb that Oriental medicine, Mokana, the veiled prophet of Khorasan, caused his false son to emerge. The history of men is reflected in the history of the sewer. The Germani narrated Rome. The sewer of Paris has been an ancient and formidable thing. It has been a sepulchre. It has served as an asylum. Crime, intelligence, social protest, liberty of conscience, thought, theft, all that human laws persecute or have persecuted is hidden in that hole. The Malians in the 14th century, the Tire line of the 15th, the Huguenots in the 16th, Morins illuminated in the 17th, the Schaffers in the 18th, 100 years ago, a nocturnal blow of the dagger emerged thence. The pickpocket in danger slipped thither. The forest had its cave. Paris had its sewer. Vagrancy, that Gallic accepted the sewer as the adjunct of the Cour des Miracles, and at evening it returned thither, fierce and sly, through the Mabe outlet, as into the bedchamber. It was quite natural that those who had the blind alley, Vide Gosset, and the Rue Cou Gorge for the scene of their daily labor, should have been, for their domicile by night, the culvert of the Kemenvert, and the cash basin of the Hurapoix. Hence a throng of souvenirs. All sorts of phantoms haunt these long solitary corridors. Everywhere the putrents of miasma, here and there are breathing holes, and villain, wherein converses with Rabalius without. The sewer in ancient Paris is the rendezvous of all exhaustion, of all attempts. Political economy therein spies a detritus. A social philosophy there beholds a residuum. The sewer is the conscience of the city. Everything there converges and confronts everything else. In that livid spot there are shades, but there are no longer any secrets. Each thing bears its true form, or at least its definite form. The mass of filth has this in its favor, that it is not a liar. Ingenuousness has taken refuge here. The mask of Basil is not to be found here, but one beholds its cardboard and its strings, and the inside as well as the outside, and it is accentuated by honest mud. Scapin's false nose is its next-door neighbor. All of the uncleanliness of civilization, once past their use, fall into this trench of truth, wherein the immense social sliding ends. They are there engulfed, and they display themselves there. This mixture is a confession. There is no more false appearances. No plastering over is possible. Filth removes its shirt. Absolute denudation puts to the rout all illusions and mirages. There is nothing more except what really exists, presenting the sinister form of that which is coming to an end. There, the bottom of the bottle indicates drunkenness. A basket handle tells a tale of domesticity. There, the core of an apple, which has entertained literary opinions, becomes an apple core once more. The effigy on the Big Sue becomes frankly covered with verdigris. Caiaphas's spittle meets Falstaff's puking. The Louis d'Or which comes from the gaming house, jostles the nail whence hangs the rope's end of a suicide. A livid Fotis rolls along, enveloped in the spangles which danced at the opera last Shrove Tuesday. A cap, which has pronounced judgment on men, wallows beside a mass of rottenness, which was formerly Murgaton's petticoat. It is more than fraternization. It is equivalent to addressing each other as thou. All which was formerly rouged is washed free. The last veil is torn away. A sewer is a cynic. It tells everything. The sincerity of foulness pleases us and rests the soul, which one has passed one's time in enduring upon earth the spectacle of the great airs, which reasons of state, the oath, political sagacity, human justice, professional probity, the austerities of situation, incorruptible robes, all assume. It solaces one to enter the sewer, and to behold the mire which befits it. This is instructive at the same time. We have just said that history passes through the sewer. The St. Bartholomew's filtered through there, drop by drop, between the paving stones. Great public assassinations, political and religious butcheries, traverse this underground passage of civilization, and thrust their corpses there. For the eye of the thinker, all historic murderers are to be found there. It is a hideous penumbra, on their knees, with a scrap of their winding sheet for an apron, dismally sponging out the work. Louis XI is there with Tristan, Francois I with Duprat, Charles IX is there with his mother, Richelieu is there with Louis XIII, Lorvois is there, Latellers is there, Hubert is there, and Millard are there, scratching the stones and trying to make traces of their actions disappear. Beneath these vaults one hears the brooms of specters. One there breathes the enormous fetidness of social catastrophes. One beholds reddish reflections in the corners. There flows a terrible stream in which bloody hands have been washed. The social observer would enter these shadows. They form a part of his laboratory. Philosophy is the microscope of the thought. Everything desires to flee from it, but nothing escapes it. Tergiversation is useless. What side of oneself does one display in evasions? The shameful side. Philosophy pursues with its glance, probes the evil, and does not permit it to escape into nothingness. In the obliteration of things which disappear, in the watching of things which vanish, it recognizes all. It reconstructs the purple from the rag, and the woman from the scrap of her dress. From the cesspool it reconstitutes the city. From the mud it reconstitutes manners. From the potsherd it infers the amphora of the jug. By the imprint of a fingernail on a piece of parchment, it recognizes the difference which separates the Jewry of the Judengasse from the Jewry of the ghetto. It rediscovers in what remains that which has been good, evil, the true, the bloodstained of the palace, the inkblot of the cavern, the drop of sweat from the brothel, trials undergone, temptations welcomed, orgies cast forth, the turn which characters have taken as they become abased, the trace of prostitution in the souls of which their grossness rendered them capable, and of the vesture of the porters of Rome, the mark of Messalina's elbowing. Chapter 3. Bruneseau. The sewer of the Middle Ages was legendary. In the 16th century, Henry II attempted a bore which failed. Not 100 years ago, the cesspool, Mercier attests to the fact, was abandoned to itself and fared as best it might. Such was this ancient Paris, delivered over the quarrels, to indecisions, and to gropings. It was tolerably stupid for a long time. Later on, in 89, showed how understanding comes to cities. But in the good old times, the capital had not much head. It did not know how to manage its own affairs, either morally or materially, and could not sweep out filth any better than it could abuses. Everything presented an obstacle. Everything raised a question. The sewer, for example, was refractory to every itinerary. One could no more find one's bearings in the sewer than one could understand one's position in the city. Above, the unintelligible. Below, the inextricable. Beneath the confusion of tongues, there reigned the confusion of caverns. Daedalus backed up Babel. Sometimes the Paris sewer took the notion to overflow, as though this misunderstood Nile were suddenly seized with a fit of rage. There occurred, infamous to relate, inundations from the sewer. At times that stomach of civilization digested badly. The cesspool flowed back into the throat of the city, and Paris got the aftertaste of her own filth. These resemblances of the sewer to remorse had their good points. They were warnings. Very badly accepted, however. The city waxed indignant at the audacity of its mire, and did not admit that the filth should return. Drive it out better. The inundation of 1802 is one of the actual memories of Parisians of the age of 80. The mud spread in cross form over the Place des Victors, where stands a statue of Louis XIV. It entered Rue Saint-Honore by the two mouths of the sewer in the Champs-Élysées, the Rue Saint-Florentin, through the Saint-Florentin sewer, the Rue Pierre-Poisson, through the sewer of de la Sonnerie, through various other sewers, and other French places. It covered the drain of... It was very bad, it flowed very high, it made the people sad. Moving on. a few paces distant from the house in which Racine had lived, respecting in the 17th century the poet more than the king. It attained a maximum depth in the Saint Pierre, where it rose to a height 3 feet above the flagstones of the water spout, and the maximum length of the Rue Saint-Saban, where it spread out to stretch over 238 meters in length. At the beginning of the century, the sewer of Paris was a mysterious place. Mud can never enjoy a good fame. But, in this case, its evil renown reached the verge of the terrible. Paris knew, in a confused way, that she had under her a terrible cavern. People talked of it as of that monstrous bed in Thebes, in which swarmed centipedes 15 long feet in length, and which might have served Behemoth for a bathtub. The great boots of the sewermen never ventured further than a certain well-known points. We were then very near the epoch of the scavengers' carts, from the summit of which Saint Foy fraternized with Marquis de Crequy, discharged their loads directly into the sewer. As for cleaning out, the function was entrusted to the pouring rains that encumbered rather than swept away. Rome left some poetry to her sewer, and called it Gemonia. Paris insulted hers, and entitled it the Polypus Hole. Science and superstition were in accord. In horror! The Polypus Hole was no less repugnant to hygiene than to legend. The goblin was developed under the fetid covering of the Mouffetard sewer. The corpses of the marmosets had been cast into the sewer de la Beryl. Fagon attributed the redoubling malignant fever of 1685 to the great hiatus of the sewer of the Marius, which remained yawning until 1833 in the Rue Saint-Louis, almost opposite the sign of the Gallant Messenger. The mouth of the sewer of the Rue de la Mortellerie was celebrated for the pestilences which had their source there. With its grating iron, with points simulating a row of teeth, it was like a dragon's maw in the fatal street, breathing forth hell upon men. The popular imagination seasoned the somber Parisian sink with some indescribably hideous intermixture of the infinite. The sewer had no bottom. The sewer was the lower world. The idea of exploring these leprous regions did not even occur to the police. To try that unknown thing, to cast the plummet into that shadow, to set out on a voyage of discovery in that abyss. Who would have dared? It was alarming. Nevertheless, someone did present himself. The cesspool had its Christopher Columbus. One day in 1805, during one of the rare apparitions which the emperor made in Paris, the minister of the interior, some Decrasse or Cretet or other, came to the master's intimate levee. In the carousel there was audible and clanking of swords of all the extraordinary soldiers of the great republic and of the great empire. Then Napoleon's door was blocked with heroes, men from the Rhine, from the Escaut, from the Adige, and from the Nile, companions of Jolbert, of Desaix, of Marcoux, of Hoche, of Kleber. Lots of great people, of great soldiers, hussars whom the pyramids had looked down upon, artillerists whom Jonnet's cannonball had spattered with mud, cuirassiers who had taken by assault the fleet lying at anchor in the Zuydzee. Some had followed Bonaparte upon the bridge of Lodi. Others had accompanied Murat in the trenches of Mantua. Others had preceded Lannes in the hollow road of Montebello. The whole army of that day was present there, in the courtyard of the Tuileries, represented by a squadron or platoon, and guarding Napoleon in repose. And that was the splendid epoch when the grand army of Marengo behind in the Austerlitz before it. "Sire," said the Minister of the Interior to Napoleon, "yesterday I saw the most intrepid man in your empire." "What man is that?" said the Emperor brusquely, "and what has he done?" "He wants to do something, sire." "What is it?" "To visit the sewers of Paris." This man existed, and his name was Bruneseau. Chapter 4. The visit took place. I'm gonna pause for one moment. As you can tell, I really struggle with the French names. This is what we've been building up towards. This right here. This should be it. Oh boy. There's quite a build-up to this chapter. Okay. Chapter 4. No title given. The visit took place. It was a formidable campaign, a nocturnal battle against pestilence and suffocation. It was, at the same time, a voyage of discovery. One of the survivors of this expedition, an intelligent working man, who was very young at the time, related curious details with regard to it several years ago, which Bruneseau thought himself obliged to omit in his report to the prefect of police, as unworthy of official style. The processes of disinfection were, at that epoch, extremely rudimentary. Hardly had Bruneseau crossed the first articulations of that subterranean network when 8 laborers out of the 20 refused to go any further. The operation was complicated. The visit entailed the necessity of cleaning. Hence, it was necessary to cleanse and at the same time to proceed. To note the entrances of water, to count the gratings and the vents, to lay out in detail the branches, to indicate the currents at the point where they parted, to define the respective bonds of the divers basins, to sound the small sewers grafted onto the principal sewer, to measure the height under the keystone of each drain and the width at the spring of the vaults as well as at the bottom, in order to determine the arrangements with regard to the level of each water entrance, either of the bottom of the arch or on the soil of the street. They advanced with toil. The lanterns pined away in the foul atmosphere. From time to time, a fainting sewerman was carried off. At certain points, there were precipices. The soil had given way. The pavement had crumbled. The sewer had changed into a bottomless well. They found nothing solid. A man disappeared suddenly. They had great difficulty in getting him out again. On the advice of Fourcroy, they lighted large cages filled with tow steeped in resin. From time to time, in spots which had been sufficiently disinfected, in other places, the wall was covered with misshapen fungi. One would have said tumors. The very stones seemed diseased within this unbreathable atmosphere. Bruneseau, in his exploration, proceeded downhill. At the point of separation of the 2 water conduits of the Grand Holler, he deciphered upon a projecting stone the date of 1550. This stone indicated the limits of where Philbert Delorme, charged by King Henry II with visiting the subterranean drains of Paris, had halted. This stone was the mark of the 16th century on the sewer. Bruneseur found the handiwork of the 17th century once more in the Pont-Q drain of the old Rue Villers des Temples, vaulted between 1600 and 1650, and the handiwork of the 18th in the western section of the collecting canal, walled and vaulted in 1740. These two vaults, especially the less ancient, that of 1740, were more cracked and decrepit than the masonry of the belt sewer, which dated from 1412, the epoch when the brook of fresh water of Menilmontant was elevated to the dignity of the grand sewer of Paris, an achievement analogous to that of a peasant who would become the first valet de chambre to the king, something like Grosjean transformed into Lebel. Here and there, particularly beneath the courthouse, they thought they recognized the hollows of ancient dungeons excavated in the very sewer itself, hideous in place, an iron-necked collar which was hanging in one of these cells. They walled them all up. Some of their finds were singular, among others the skeleton of an orangutan, which had disappeared from the Jardin des Plantes in 1800, a disappearance probably connected with the famous and indisputable apparition of the devil in the Rue des Bernardins. In the last year of the 18th century, the poor devil had ended by drowning himself in the sewer. Beneath this long arched drain, with terminating at the Arc Marion, a perfectly preserved rag-picker's basket excited the admiration of all connoisseurs. Everywhere the mire, which the sewermen came to handle with intrepidity, abounded with precious objects, jewels of gold and silver, precious stones, coins. If a giant had filtered this cesspool, he would have found the riches of centuries in his lair. At the point where the two branches of the Rue du Temple and of the Rue Saint-Avoy separate, they picked up a singular Huguenot medal in copper, bearing in one side the pig hooded with the cardinal's hat, and on the other a wolf with a tiara on its head. The most surprising rencounter was at the entrance of the grand sewer. This entrance had formerly been closed by a grating of which nothing but the hinges remained. From one of these hinges hung a dirty and shapeless rag, which, arrested there in the passage no doubt, had floated there in the darkness and finished its process of being torn apart. Brousseau held a lantern close to this rag and examined it. It was a very fine bastiste, and in one of the corners, less frayed than the rest, they made out a heraldic coronet, and embroidered above these 7 letters, L-A-V-B-E-S-P. The crown was the coronet of the Marquise, and the 7 letters signified L'Aubespine. They recognized the fact that what they had before their eyes was a morsel of the shroud of Marat. Marat in his youth had amorous intrigues. This was when he was a member of the household of the Comte d'Artois, in the capacity of a physician to the stables. From these love affairs, historically proved, with a great lady, he had retained his sheet as a wraith or a souvenir. At his death, as this was the only linen of any fineness which he had in his house, they buried him in it. Some old woman had shrouded him for the tomb in that swaddling band in which the tragic friend of the people had enjoyed voluptuousness. Brunesset passed on. They left that rag where it hung. They did not put the finishing touch to it. Did this arise from scorn or from respect? Marat deserved both. And then, destiny was there sufficiently stamped to make them hesitate to touch it. Besides, the things of the sepulchre must be left in the spot which they select. In short, the relic was a strange one. The Marquis had slept on it, Marat had rotted in it, it had traversed the Parthenon to end with the rats of the sewer. This chamber rag, of which Watteau would formerly have joyfully sketched every fold, had ended in becoming worthy of the fixing gaze of Dante. The whole visit to the subterranean stream of filth of Paris lasted 7 years, from 1805 to 1812. As he proceeded, Bruneseau drew, directed, and completed considerable works. In 1808 he lowered the arch of the Ponceau, and everywhere created new lines. He pushed the sewer in 1809 under the Rue Saint-Denis as far as the Fountain of Innocence, in 1810 under the Rue Freudmontoux, under the Salpêtrière, whatever that is. I'm sorry. Look, I'm sure I've lost the respect of half my European audience now, but I cannot speak French. I cannot even pronunciate half the words of my own language half the time. Okay? Holy shit. Moving on. It was thus that, in the beginning of the century, ancient society cleansed its double bottom and performed the toilet of its sewer. There was that much clean, at all events. Tortuous, cracked, unpaved, full of fissures, intersected by gullies, jolted by eccentric elbows, mounted and descending, illogically fetid, wild, fierce, submerged with obscurity, with cicatrices on its pavements and scars on its walls. Terrible. Such was, retrospectively viewed, the antique sewer of Paris. Ramifications in every direction, crossing the trenches, branching goose feet, stars, as the military mines. Something. Blind alleys, vaults lined with saltpeter, falsified pools, scabby sweats on the walls, drops dripping from the ceilings, darkness. Nothing could equal the horror of old crypt waste, the digestive remains of Babylon, on a cavern. Ditch, gulf pierced the streets, a titanic mole barrow, where the mind seems to behold that enormous blind mole, the past prowling from the shadows, in the filth which has been splendor. This, we repeat, was the sewer of the past. I'm going to stop here. As you can see, there are more chapters on the sewer. Long chapters. Before finally, our main character and our story resumes. Because, I don't know, this is just how Victor Hugo wrote books. Honestly, I wish he wrote books today because I think they would be amazing. Holy crap, the things he'd say about stuff today. Anyway, I wanted to talk about this, and you kind of have to have read this and have it fresh in your mind so I can point at different things. There is more. There is more, but I think we have enough to work with here. So, my contention. Victor Hugo is at least partially responsible for the absolute prevalence of sewer levels in video games. Which probably began with the pen and paper games, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing, including sewers. And I really do think that a large part of the reason they're prevalent is this book. Because you can bet that quite a few developers read this at some point, probably while in college. But their descriptions of the sewer, we have everything from the goblin was developed. It's like the way they talk about it. But then you come to, you know, just how much of a dungeon, what a horrible place no one dares expose. That huge thing on how brave someone would have to be to go into the sewers. That Napoleon, surrounded by the greatest soldiers he ever had, and this guy comes up to him, yesterday I saw the most intrepid man in your empire. It's like the bravest of all men. And then they start talking about treasure, because we had treasure in here. I was in there somewhere, you heard it, gold, silver, jewels, coins. That all of history comes to rest down there. As well as quite a bit about the dead and specters and stuff. Now, of course, it doesn't mention anything undead, but I won't pretend I've read all the old books, but I have read a lot of old books, and I haven't seen any other old books go into sewers. Not like this. Oh my gosh, the fact that there were dungeons carved out in the sewers and that people had been implied strongly that people had been chained up in them. Orangutans, that fierce animals were down there. We still have urban legends to this day about fierce animals in our sewers. This ridiculous thing, and I love his opening one. The land impoverished by the sea is just one of those things where it's like, no, you gotta hear this. You gotta hear what Victor Hugo thinks about a sewer. It's like, holy crap. I love it. It's terrible. It's amazing. I really do wish this guy would write about modern. Could you imagine what he'd say about social media? Holy crap. He would give us... one of his characters in the novel would pick up a cell phone, and then he'd have to write, what is this, 5 chapters, six chapters about the history of social media before they could answer their Twitter. It would be amazing. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If you want a good reader who can actually read this thing, go to LibriVox. Yep, you'll find somebody who can read all of this and pronounce everything correctly. I just want to talk about this, man. I look forward to the comments under this video. Okay, probably most of them will be about what the hell's wrong with you. You couldn't read this. Why do you even try? Well, too damn bad. It's my channel and I can do anything I want. Now I'm going to pull out this ancient Greek book in a language I don't read. No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, actually, come to think of it. No. Anyway, let's see what chat has been saying while I was reading. Let's see. Oh, well, Lotus Land Sigma misses out. That's unfortunate. Hey there, Hermes. Yep, the old year is over. It just ended 7 minutes ago for me. I know you're all in different time zones. None of you are in Alaskan time zone. But, yeah. That's how I close 2020. A long reading entirely about raw sewage. And going down into it. And what you may find in the muck. It seems fitting for this year. In a couple of hours, we'll kick off the new year with Master of Magic. A great way to kick off a new year. I only wish I was starting a new game of it for the new year instead of finishing an old one. But whatever. I want to see the end of that one. Let's see. I'm sorry, what's happening? Oh shit, you're right. There's 31 days in December. Ha! Your Hadriex is an idiot. Oh. I looked at the calendar. I saw it was the 30th, and I said, well, shit, we're going to do this. No, you're right. It's the 31st now. Oh, crap. Well, now I have to find something even worse to read to end 2020. No, 2020 just doesn't end. It keeps going. You want it to end. You want it to be the final day. And it has another one. It's never going to end, you realize. 2021 is only going to be its second coming, its sequel. We're doomed. Anyway. Whatever, I'll just change the title of this video. And people will make fun of me in the comments. Let's see. Yep, 31st. Currently, the new year is nowhere. First places are less than an hour to year change. Okay, well, someplace in the world is about to become the new year. There you go. I preempted it, damn it. Yeah. Oh, no, don't just read spell books unless you know what they are. That's a good way to get cursed. And possessed. Nah. Oh, boy. Anyway. Yeah. Is there any gems I can pick out of the remaining chapters here real quick? Let's see. When the people love their kings. The present sewer is a beautiful sewer. The pure style reigns here. Yes, yes, he goes on about the poetry of the current sewer, because of course he does. This man, he talks about the free air of Paris, and he talks about, when he's talking about what we'd call street urchins anywhere else in the world, he talks about how anywhere else they'd be terrible, but in Paris they're just good-hearted rascals. Like, oh my gosh, the thing, this is quite into Paris being amazing. Everything in Paris is the greatest in the world. When Victor Hugo's writing it, it sounds like an amazing place. Okay, anyway, let's see. Subterranean palace. Even the vermin grow tame. So satisfied are they with their subterranean palace. The cesspool no longer retains anything of its primitive ferocity. Like, man, the way he writes about it, it goes on and on and on. We're going to skip down. Excavation of the sewer has been no slight task. He's probably wrong with the future progress. They still haven't fully mapped out all that stuff down there. The subterranean labyrinth. He uses a lot more dungeony words in here. I don't think I'm going to be able to just pick out the most wonderful things out of here. I think I'd have to sit down and go through it all. I'm just kind of skimming right now. Insurrection. Yeah, also, of course, the criminals, the anytime there's insurrection, assassins, all kinds of things hiding in the sewer that he mentioned earlier. Gotta mention that. Let's see. I think we'll just pretty much call it here. In a couple of hours, I'll be starting my caster of magic. Let's see. Yeah. There's the washing the sewer. Yeah, and he gets back into his stuff about how they're wasting all their money. And then you actually get to have chapters where our heroes are actually in the sewer adventuring. Jean Valjean is, I think he was hiding from Javert. Well, I mean, good grief. Anywhere in the book he's hiding from Javert, so okay, fair enough. God, I want to do a video just on Javert. He is one of the greatest... I'm going to call him a villain, although I don't think that's quite fair. But he's like one of the greatest villains in all of fiction. And he has become the archetype for an entire kind of character we see in tons of books today. He's amazing. Yeah. But Jean Valjean, the hero of this novel, he's basically Catholic Batman. I don't know how else to explain it. He's Catholic Batman. Before Batman. Like, no, he doesn't punch criminals. He goes around giving money to the poor. But the things, the disappearing acts he performs, the wild tricks that he does things nobody thinks are even possible. And just, I think the most crazy thing was when he had like a coin that he'd hollowed out and he'd turned it, he'd basically hidden a tool in a coin. Like, just crazy shit. He's one of the most amazing characters. But well, you've had a taste of what the novel's like. I do recommend it, but as before mentioned, this is a guy who can spend 5 hours talking about the sewers so that he can finally go, okay, I've put the setting in place, now we can actually have more story. Yeah. It's a big one. You're in for quite a ride. Quite a ride to get through it. And it actually takes a little bit to really get going. It's not until... geez, I'm not exactly certain when. Oh my gosh, was this novel that contained... Was this the one that contained... Yes. Of course. Because we needed a recounting of the Battle of Waterloo. A great, big, epic recounting of it. Didn't we? Yes, yes it is. Right. That's right, that was it. Okay, I remember that. Yeah, that was this one. I thought that was War and Peace. War and Peace did a whole lot about Napoleon and Napoleon's battles. But no, that was in this book. Okay. It has been quite a while since I read this. Yeah. Do you know War and Peace, of all things? Somebody drunken ties a police, if I remember right, ties a police officer to a bear and throws him in the river. And I'm like, holy shit, this is the most badass character ever. Holy shit. This is, and everyone in the story just regards this as a drunken prank that they just kind of tut-tut at. Like, ugh, yeah, you did that? That guy. It's like, holy shit, that guy, what, he threw a bear. He tied a guy to, he threw it in the, and nobody's impressed? Nobody's impressed by that. You explore classic literature, you're gonna find weird things nobody talks about. I'm not even kidding. You find weird shit. Has anybody ever talked to you about the giant sewage 5-6 chapters in the middle of Les Mis? Has that made it into any adaptation? Any? No, of course not. And it never will. Nobody's gonna adapt that. Ever. That is not, nobody is ever going to publish something like that again. You send Les Mis in to any modern publisher who somehow never heard of it, they're gonna laugh and send the rejection note so fast. Well, let's be honest, they'd never even read the thing. They get halfway down the first page and just immediately go, no, nobody has vocabulary large enough to comprehend this. Ship it back. Oh, our poor modern publisher. They deserve it, though. Now that I've alienated all publishers, so I'll never ever get anything published myself, I shall retire for a while. Until next time and every time, this is Hadriex signing off. Buster thinks 2021 is going to be a good year. Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. But honestly, I would be preparing right now. You might want to take a notebook, write down the prices of things in your grocery store, your electronics section and stuff, and check back a month later and see what they are. The prices of everything are rising very quickly. We have printed more US dollars. We've printed something crazy. Like every time I check, it's gone higher. First, it was 25% of all US dollars were printed in 2020. Then it was 35%. Now I'm hearing crazy numbers like 60, which I don't even, 60% of all money printed this year. I don't believe that. I don't know, man. I'm going to double check that. But yeah, no. Things are out of control. Really out of control. Don't be surprised by anything. Don't be surprised by anything that happens. And just make sure you're ready for whatever shit may come, because holy shit. That's just one thing that's going on right now in the world. That's just one alarming trend. Yeah. I would like 2021 to be a good year. But hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Catch y'all later.